Well, hello, and welcome to another Perth Baptist Church interview. My name is James, and I have with me Mhairi Hepburn, who is a consultant psychiatrist at Murray Royal Hospital in Perth. We are both part of the fellowship at Perth Baptist Church. Mhairi is an ideal person to give us some very good advice as to how we should prepare over the next few weeks, perhaps months, to worship God together in person back in our church building. For the past 15 months, we as a church have been worshipping together online. But now at last, we are gradually beginning to worship God together again in limited numbers, but in person on a Sunday morning and inside our church building. Mhairi is going to help us prepare well for this experience. So Mhairi, I wonder if I could start by asking you, as a wife, as a mother of two boys, and as a consultant psychiatrist at Murray Royal, how has lockdown affected the mental health of people in our community?
Well, I've been very, very busy recently, and I think the biggest contributor to that really has been COVID and the associated restrictions. People that I'm seeing are really quite unwell. GPs will deal with most people with mental health problems, so I'm tending to see people who've become markedly unwell, as whether that's as a result of anything to do with COVID or something else. But I'm also very aware that there's been an effect on most people's mental well-being as a result of the events of the past 15 months or so. Obviously, COVID itself has had an effect on the mental health of a lot of people who've had it, or have maybe lost somebody, or gone through the trauma of a loved one being unwell. A lot of other people have been anxious about the possibility of getting COVID. A lot of people are been much more isolated than they've ever been in their life before, because of the restrictions. I'm seeing a lot of people who are suffering through lack of activity and having meaningful things to do through the week, whether they're even if they're working. Some people are really struggling with the lack of the usual things that they would do with their free time, and I'm seeing it a lot as well. Some of my patients and folk that used to go to day centres and other activities, and their carers are struggling because they're at home all the time or most of the time. I think a lot of other folk, particularly recently, because we're all realising that this is going on for much longer than we expected it to, and realising that there's not going to be a clear end to it anytime soon. A lot of people have struggled with uncertainty. And I think at the start, a lot of people coped really admirably because we didn't really think it would last that long. And there were lots of things you could do, and you could go for your daily walk, and you could put a rainbow up in your window, and you could do workouts on Zoom, and then after a while, it all sank in that really this is going on for a long time. The lockdowns brought some positives for some people as well. That whether it's that they've spent more time with family, or that they've enjoyed not having the same sort of obligations, and not had the same sort of busy whether it's social contact, or just feeling sensory overstimulation at work or just out and about. And I've always borne that in mind as well, because I have seen a minority of people who've found that lockdowns had a good effect on their mental health. Maybe people that I've been seeing for years and they've never been better. And I think with lockdown ending as well, not that things are over yet, but some things some restrictions are being lifted, and some people are really enjoying it, and other folk are feeling quite overwhelmed by going back to things that they've not done for a while, feeling overstimulated, especially if they've been shielding for a long time and had a lot of months when they weren't going out of the house. Some people are worried about the rules changing, and if they go out and we go into a shop or something, are they doing the right thing, and worry about getting something wrong. So there's a lot going on for most people. I can't imagine there are many people who've been completely unaffected by all this. And I'm always very aware that, I'm seeing a relatively small number of people, but there are a lot of just slightly milder effects on other people's well-being as well.
Thank you very much. And I think each of us could echo many of the things you've mentioned. So, Mhairi, can I ask you, what different emotions will people likely experience when we start meeting together again in the church building for communal worship of God?
So some people are really looking forward to getting back to face-to-face services, and some of them are going to really enjoy it. And I hope everybody does enjoy it. I hope it's it's going to be a great thing. I suppose some people though are going to feel it's disappointing that it's not how it used to be, and there'll be things that are different about church and restrictions that we didn't have, and it's okay to feel sad about that. And some people will find themselves feeling a bit flat, disappointed the first time they go back, and that's okay. It's difficult to adjust to change, and I think especially when this has affected people's mental well-being for a while, and a lot of people are more isolated and a bit more prone to feeling rejected or worrying about things, because when you are on your own more than you used to be, you do think over things, and going along to a church service when you're not having the same sort of hanging around chatting with everybody and hugging people, and it's okay to feel a bit sad about that. Some people might be stressed out about restrictions as well, and some people might, whether it's that wearing a mask and following one-way systems, and just whether it's that you're worried about getting it right, or you're just sort of concerned about whether or not we're needing to do it. People do find that quite stressful as well, and I've got some advice in a few minutes about how we can make that a bit easier. Some people will get quite overwhelmed from a sensory point of view as well, maybe more later on when we've got more people in the church building, or when social distancing becomes a bit less and we're not keeping 2 meters apart from folk. But it's something that I saw a lot at home and at work after the first lockdown started easing, and everything from Darach being horrified by how many cars there were on the Glen Erin Road, to people in my open plan office at work who are usually used to the noise, just finding it all difficult after people started coming back to the office, after most people were working from home. That's something we need to think about as well, especially folk who've been shielding, or who've just been in a position where they've not had a lot of things to go out of the house for. 50 people doesn't seem a lot for a church service, but for some people that'll be the first time in a long time that they've been in a room with 49 other people, and that we need to think about that as well.
That's good. So it'll be all right to turn around and have a good look to see who else is there. But we do need to appreciate that some people will be quicker to come back into the building than others, and we must respect different people's different rates of returning to church. So, Mhairi, how or what could we do to encourage people to come back to church in person, especially those who are very reluctant and a wee bit scared?
So I think that the main thing is making sure everybody knows they're welcome. If you're desperate to be back and you're desperate for all the restrictions to be lifted so you can do all the usual things, you're welcome to be back at church. If you'd like to be back, but there are reasons why you're a bit reluctant, you're welcome as well. And we need to work with you on what's easier for you. And there are some people as well who would like to stay online for the rest of their lives, and as I said earlier, I've been in contact with quite a number of people who actually I've quite enjoyed not having face-to-face contact with many people, and I became that we respect that as well, and encourage everybody to engage in church in the way that they want to. And you know, if you're reluctant to come back, but you really did feel, oh, you know, I used to so much enjoy coming to church in the past. Yeah, think about what would help you feel more confident about coming to church. How can we support you? But if you know, if being on Zoom's been a huge relief, then that's what you want to do. You're just as much part of the church as people who are there booking their tickets as soon as they become available for their the limit of 50 people, and they're desperate to get back. You know, we're welcoming everybody. I think people being aware of how they might feel about church being different is really important. That's why I was keen to do this video before the services start. And when we were chatting earlier, I'd likened it to a talk I used to do for the new doctors on their first day at Ninewells, and talking about some of the stresses they might come up against, and them telling me weeks later that they had thought I was talking nonsense when I did the talk, and they didn't think it was that relevant to them. And then once they were working, they realised that it really did make sense. And sometimes being prepared for things that might be a bit more stressful than you think they will be can be good. So even just being okay, you know, some things will be frustrating, some things will be disappointing, and it's okay to feel like that. We've spoken about feeding back to deacons as well about how things have been. So when the services restart, you know, there's been a lot of care put into thinking, how do we do things? How do we make sure that we fit in with all the restrictions that we have to, but make things as welcoming as possible for people? But anytime anybody does anything new, there are going to be unintended consequences. And if there's something that's made you feel isolated or disappointed or upset, letting somebody know. And if you've got ideas for what could make things easier, then we need to work together on that. You be creative, think of if there's something that might work, let the deacons know, and they can take these things into account. I think making the regulations clear is really helpful. I was talking earlier about uncertainty and how that can contribute to anxiety for a lot of people for various reasons. And if people are aware of what they need, what they're to do when they get to church, you know, there's information given out ahead of time, and people are reminded at the start of the service. Even things like how to leave the sanctuary if you need to during the service. I'm seeing a lot of people with agoraphobia at the moment because they've not been out a lot in the past year and a bit. And you know, it's okay if you're finding it all a bit much, and you know, we need to make sure everybody's aware of, you know, this is how you go outside, and what else you know, what is and isn't allowed after the service, and things that you can do. You know, we can't all have everybody congregating in the car park and a chat, but I think there'll be plenty of ideas for other things people can do to socialise later on, and you know, going for walks, and just coming up with positive things you can do, even if we can't do all the things that we used to. And I think just continuing to encourage each other and look after each other, talk about things. If you're finding things difficult, you know, tell somebody, and we can work out how to support each other.
Mhairi, that's really helpful. Thank you very much for giving us food for thought as we think about coming back to worship God together in church in person. It's really been helpful, and I think I'm encouraged. Just over 50 months ago, we had to learn how to live in lockdown. Now we're going to have to learn how to live slowly and gradually coming out of lockdown, and you've helped us prepare for that. And hopefully, maybe in a month or two, we can come back to you and we'll see how things are going and look to you for a wee bit more advice. But meanwhile, Mhairi, thank you very much indeed. And thanks for being with us. Bye, everyone, for now.